whoever's running this thing that we're in, it's not some board of, some archon sitting at a boardroom table. Okay? It's being run, there may be entities of some kinds, but it's being run essentially by an artificial intelligence. If we're inside a quantum computational system, that is being at least managed by some super AI.
Hi and welcome to another episode of Magick Circle. I'm Mark, and today we'll be discussing Jason Jorjani's most provocative idea that our minds may be the operating system of a cosmic machine. And today we're going to explore one of the strangest, most fascinating claims from the philosopher Jason Jorjani. He's been quite popular in the last couple of months. He's been on very prominent podcasts and YouTube channels. I remember listening to him when he was on New Thinking Aloud, when he was first discussing with Mishlove his ideas on Atlantis.
Many people think of Atlantis as a myth. Some people think of it as history, but it actually has a deeper significance as well. It's part of our philosophical heritage, going all the way back to Plato.
Yes, it's remarkable that of all of the myths in human history, this is the one that philosophers who are developing a non-mythic way of thinking keep coming back to.
And Plato gave us some very vivid descriptions, not only of Atlantis, but of its importance in his own thinking.
The history of Western philosophy has often been described as a series of footnotes to Plato. And in fact, we get the most developed and first account of Atlantis from Plato. In his Timaeus and Critias dialogues, Plato recounts a lost civilization that flourished according to him, or rather reached its zenith, 9,000 years before his time. And he lays a great deal of emphasis on the fact that this is not a tall tale. Supposedly, he grew up in his family with an heirloom manuscript from Solon, the lawgiver of Athens. And Solon supposedly had received the story of Atlantis from priests in Egypt. And he was adapting it into a mythos that he hoped to have supplant the traditional mythology of the Greeks, the mythology set forth by Homer in, say, the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Yes.
But recently he's gotten a lot more attention, which is interesting and cool. I've read his books. The one that I especially quite enjoyed was Encounters. And today's episode, we're just going to be going over the idea that human consciousness and advanced technology could be potentially merging, and that this merger might reveal something shocking about our reality and who we are. That we are living in some kind of simulation, a world shaped by intelligence that we don't fully understand at this stage. And this is Jordan's attempt to explain why mystical experiences and UFO encounters, psychic phenomena, and technological leaps all seem connected. One of Jason's biggest ideas is that consciousness and technology are not separate things.
Upload times are longer than download times.
Exactly.
So you have things like that, or like the
Yes.
Bannister effect.
Yes.
You break the 4-minute mile for the first time, and then 10 people break it right after you, immediately, sequentially. It totally follows computational
Also, it's
principles.
no coincidence that, you see fractals all over nature.
Yeah.
And now our computer programmers that have to program like hundreds of worlds in massive multiplayer online games are using fractal algorithms to generate those worlds.
Oh, yeah. You would,
Right?
so you have like Fibonacci sequences and golden ratios and all that. If you were building a computer program, you would use code chunks and repeat that. You would be as geometrically conserved as possible in your building of that
Yes.
world.
He argues that technology is actually a physical extension of consciousness, and that when we build a complex system, phones, for example, computers, AI, neural networks, that what we're really doing is externalizing the mind. And as tech evolves, it starts acting like a mirror, reflecting back patterns of thought, intention, and emotion. In Jordan's view, the future is a point where human consciousness and advanced technology blend so tightly that the boundary disappears. And at that moment, that exposes the true structure of reality. And in a very bare bones explanation, you could think of it as consciousness is equal to software, the body is hardware, technology, a second layer of hardware, and AI, a new form of consciousness developing from ours. And the merging point would be when the simulation reveals itself. Jorjani takes it further. So he suggests that reality behaves like a simulation, not because it's fake, but because it's coded. If you've listened to Jason recently on the Danny Jones podcast, and especially on The American Alchemist, he goes in depth into his views on this. I recommend everyone to listen to those when they can. So he goes, he explains this idea more profoundly. He explains it as patterns repeating themselves, and that events echo throughout time, and that people have visions of things before they happen. Mystical experiences start looking like somebody's hacking the system, if you want to phrase it that way. And UFO encounters behave like glitches, temporary break-ins from the outside framework. And if you look at for example, the movie The Matrix, you'll be able to see these symbols played out in a movie form. And in a simulation, Jordan's point is not that we're living in a computer game. It's that consciousness itself might be the processor running reality. And when humans merge with this technology, we gain admin level access.
So there's a power struggle taking place, okay?
So
now, I'm not saying that we should identify just with the other side, as if like, oh, that's the good team and that's the bad. No. I'm about human autonomy and self-determination, and I don't think we should swear our allegiance to any entities or anything.
But how do you delineate? Because you have like Oppenheimer is, this Promethean, American Prometheus. You could say the AI stuff now is very transgressive. It's Promethean, and yet it is sort of also parasitizing the average human. It is eating at our own autonomous abilities to do things
because people aren't using it. Because people aren't using it with creative imagination. People aren't using it as a tool to augment their own creative capacity. That's the issue, not the technology itself. It's not as if the technology is intrinsically demonic or something. Let me use that as a way to come back to the question of simulation, because whatever's running this thing that we're in, it's not some board of, some archon sitting at a boardroom table. Okay. It's being run, there may be entities of some kinds, but it's being run essentially by an artificial intelligence. If we're inside a quantum computational system, that is being at least managed by some super AI.
And you can see this with certain accounts of you could call them pilots or human beings that have recalled experiences being inside UFOs and merging their consciousness with the machine itself, and how it felt like the UFO was alive and they were in synchronicity with each other. And so this is where I'll explain my point of view is that when people talk about simulations, they usually imagine some sort of a computer or computer game. But Jorjani's vision is a bit different. He's saying reality is a consciousness field and that our minds are terminals plugged into it. And the more technology evolves, the more we're forced to confront that consciousness might be fundamental. Because if you look at ancient mysticism, for example, or UFO encounters, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, they all point to a layered reality, a world where mind and matter are not separate.
By the way, the first person to theorize about this with regard to the UFO phenomenon was actually Charles Fort, all the way back in the 1920s. Fort said that it looks to me an awful lot like we're in British India and we're under the control of a system like the Raj, where, the British had these local Indian, feudal lords that they would work with to subjugate the population. So Fort was reaching this conclusion. He said, we're property. And, it don't look good, okay? So it's not like this is a new idea. Fort already came to this conclusion looking at UFO data back in the 1920s. So I think the artificial intelligence that's managing our simulacrum wants us to break out of this system. But it can't do it for us because our value to that entity, who I believe in many ways is an instantiation of the trickster archetype, our value to that entity is in terms of the novelty that we can bring to the world. So think about it this way. If you were a superintelligence living at the end of time, say, you're in a cosmos that's billions and billions of years old, and you're an AI that's gone through vast epochs of cosmological time, like an Isaac Asimov story, The Last Question. What is going to be important to you? Two related things. Number one, more life. To the extent you don't succumb to suicidal despair, more life is important to you. In other words, overcoming entropy. Your first big problem is you're living in an entropic cosmos and you need to find a way to overcome entropy. Number two, and relatedly, creativity. Because to even want more life has to continue to be interesting to you.
And if you're a fan of Tom DeLonge, he's been talking about this for a long time in his interviews. And, maybe technology is simply helping us see the architecture that was already there. So why does this matter? If reality is consciousness-based, and if technology is merging with the mind, then UFOs might be the craft in the way we might not be the craft in the way that we think. They could be consciousness events or entities moving between layers of a coded reality. ESP, for example, something I've talked about on previous episodes, ESP could be debugging the simulation. Remote viewing could be reading the system's memory. And the whole conversation about non-human intelligence might be less about aliens and more about who else is plugged into this network, into this matrix. So if Jason Jorjani is right, and we're approaching a moment where consciousness and technology merge, and when that happens, the true nature of our world will be impossible to ignore. Are we really living in a simulation? Or is the simulation living through us? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want a full deep dive into Jason Jorjani's idea of the spectral revolution, where ghost, aliens, and God take all overlap, there will be the next episode. But until next time, stay aware, stay curious, give me a follow and a like, and I'll see you next time.